No one anticipated this. Certainly not like this. For decades, the Washington-Tokyo partnership served as a pillar of global stability, forged in the post-war era and reinforced through alliances, intelligence sharing, joint defense programs, and tightly interwoven economies. It became less a relationship than a system, habitual, resilient, and indispensable. Now, that system is cracking, deeply, unexpectedly, and perilously. Headlines once unthinkable are appearing in the world's most sober outlets. Talk of an unprecedented rift, of a destabilized Asia-Pacific equilibrium, of trust collapsing at the highest levels. What was long treated as ballast of the global order has begun to list. At the center stands one man, Donald Trump. Back in the White House, he revived the old refrain, America first, and reached for a familiar instrument of pressure, tariffs. This time, however, the target was not China but Japan. With sweeping levies on autos, electronics, steel, and everyday goods, an offensive calibrated to sting both strategically and symbolically. The rationale was blunt. Japan, Trump insisted, had gamed U.S. markets for too long. The message resonated domestically, but in Tokyo it struck like a diplomatic earthquake. A country that had long underwritten parts of the American economy with industrial strength and steady demand suddenly found itself rebranded. Not a partner, but a problem. Behind closed doors, shock hardened into anger. In a private parliamentary session, the Prime Minister delivered a chilling line. If treated as an adversary, Japan would defend itself as one. With that, a new and uncertain chapter began. Ideas once confined to think tanks were abruptly actionable policy. Tokyo moved quickly. Retaliatory measures, once hypothetical, came into focus, starting with targeted export restrictions on strategically vital goods. Among the first pressure points, premium-grade tuna, a lifeline for thousands of American restaurants, distributors, and high-end sushi bars, particularly along the West Coast, where supply chains rely on Japanese imports. A quota today could become a ban tomorrow if Washington refuses to shift course. But that would only be the opening gambit. The more consequential option, quietly modeled and hotly debated, would shake global finance, selling portions of Japan's vast U.S. Treasury portfolio. Even modest sales by one of America's largest creditors could push up yields, rattle investors, and erode confidence in the dollar, an unmistakable reminder that economic warfare cuts both ways. Washington understands the stakes, yet the confrontation seems to be escalating. Trump's declarations on social platforms frame the turn as overdue correction. America will stop feeding others. Japan has exploited U.S. markets. America comes first. In Tokyo, the words registered not as policy, but as an insult, erratic to some, dangerous to others, corrosive to a trust painstakingly built over generations. Into this widening breach steps another power. Quietly, methodically, Beijing has begun sounding out Tokyo on currency coordination and energy cooperation, sensing a rare strategic opening as U.S. Japan ties fray. Should Japan tilt, even partially, toward China, decades of American strategy in Asia could drift off anchor. Public mood in Japan is shifting with unusual speed. New polling shows growing doubt that the U.S. alliance guarantees national security, rising appetite for greater self-reliance, and increased openness to diversifying ties, even as many still value the alliance itself. What began as a tariff fight is morphing into a full-spectrum realignment. The fabric of a trust-based alliance is now tugged by tariffs, posts, and threats. Two longtime allies stand closer than ever to a possibility once dismissed as unimaginable, a future without each other. For the first time in a generation, Japan is signaling a recalculation driven less by ideology than by pragmatism, investment, market access, and technology partnerships with fewer strings attached. The unthinkable is taking shape. Tokyo is reassessing where its interests and loyalties truly lie. The current situation is drawing comparisons to the early 2010s, when China used its dominance in rare earth metals to pressure Japan. Back then, it was Beijing issuing the warning. Today, it's Tokyo that may be sending a message, this time to Washington. For the United States, the stakes could not be higher. A breakdown in trust with Japan would ripple far beyond economic concerns. The entire security architecture of the Pacific built to contain China's rise rests on the U.S.-Japan alliance. Without it, the balance of power in the region could tilt overnight. Nations like South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines would be forced to reassess their positions, and China would stand to gain not just an economic partner, but a military powerhouse. Behind the scenes, the shift has already begun. According to Financial Times, Japanese funds have quietly started reducing their holdings of U.S. treasuries. The sell-offs are still small, but the pattern is unmistakable. Officially, It's about diversification and minimizing exposure. Unofficially, it's a shot across the bow, a subtle warning that Japan is no longer bound to follow America's lead unquestioningly. If Donald Trump continues down his current policy path, this recalibration could become irreversible. In a bitter twist of irony, the United States is pushing its own ally closer to Beijing. The louder Washington speaks of restoring American greatness, the more its alliances begin to crumble. Japan, the nation that once epitomized steadfast loyalty to the U.S., may soon be the first to chart a new course. If threats over tuna exports materialize, if American bonds are dumped at scale, the collapse of U.S.-Japan relations could go down as one of the defining turning points of the century. And this is no longer mere speculation. When publications like the Financial Times and Nikkei are reporting on it, when Japanese officials are confirming policy discussions, and when investors are making their first moves, rumors harden into reality. Even more concerning for Washington is the possibility that Tokyo could target America's most vulnerable sector, automobiles. According to Nikkei, Japanese officials are weighing the idea of encouraging companies like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan to shift their future investments away from the United States and into other parts of Asia, Indonesia, India, Vietnam. If that happens, tens of thousands of American jobs could vanish. Supply chains would be disrupted. The economic fallout would be severe. Goldman Sachs analysts estimate that a significant reduction in Japanese investment could shave a full percentage point off the U.S. GDP within 3 years. On Wall Street, the alarm bells are already ringing. Reuters reported a 6% drop in the stock value of General Motors and Ford following early news of possible Japanese measures. Investors fear a repeat of the 1980s when trade tensions with Japan nearly devastated entire American industries. But this time, the political will for compromise seems absent. Beyond economics, the symbolism is even more jarring. In the halls of the IMF and World Bank, quiet discussions are underway about Japan's potential engagement with BRICS Plus. For now, it's just talk of observer status, but even that marks a dramatic departure. A year ago, the idea of Japan aligning with a bloc dismissed by Washington as an alliance of losers would have been inconceivable. Today, it's a serious conversation. Add all of this together: Trump's tariffs, the threat of export bans, the quiet sell-off of U.S. debt, the redirection of industrial investment, and Japan's cautious overtures to China, and a clear picture emerges. The United States is not just at risk of losing an ally. It's endangering the very strategic framework it has spent decades building in Asia. And the most striking irony, this rupture is self-inflicted. It's not China that's prying Japan away. It's the White House pushing it out. History is entering a phase where diplomacy is no longer about alliances, but survival. If Trump continues along this trajectory, he may be remembered not as a leader who restored American dominance, but as the one who dismantled the most important alliance in the Pacific. The global order is shifting, and in this new landscape, Japan may no longer stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States, but face it from across the divide.